Research is to see what everybody else has seen and to think what nobody else has thought. Albert Georgi. A very good morning to esteemed dignitaries, respected seniors and teachers, dear colleagues, students, members of the press and media. Faculty of the Research and Development KGMU is honored to welcome you all to the Research Showcase 2022. May I request the Dean Research and Development to kindly escort to the dais Professor K. Srinath Reddy, our chief guest for today, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Lieutenant General B. K. Puri, Dean Academics, Professor A. K. Tripathi, and Dean Faculty of Dental Sciences, Professor Tikku. Thank you very much. You are as welcome as the flowers are in spring. We wish a warm welcome to the luminaries with an Ekal Pushp to our Honorable Chief Guest, to Vice Chancellor, sir, to Dean Academics, to the Dean Faculty of Dental Sciences, to our Dean R&D, Saraswati Ma is the supreme authority in academics, sciences, and the arts. Her Vandana is our prayer. By us mortals, endowed with knowledge and wisdom, we are illuminating our life to find the path with a prayer to dispel ignorance and darkness. Jyoti Vaishnavi, Afreen, Sushma, and Priyam are requested to recite the Vandana, and I request the dignitaries to please light the lamp of knowledge while the Vandana is going on.
जय जय हे भगवती सुर भारती तब चरणों प्रणमामः। जय जय हे भगवती सुर भारती तब चरणों प्रणमामः। सगा ग ग म म म ध ध ध नि नि सा नि ध नि ध प म ध प म ग म ग रे सा। सगा ग ग म म म ध ध ध नि नि सा नि ध नि ध प म ध प म ग म ग रे सा। आसीना भव मानस हंसे कुंद तुहिन शशि धवले। हर जनतां कुरु बोधि विकासम। हर जनतां कुरु बोधि विकासम। सिद्ध पंकज तनु विमले। जय जय हे भगवती सुर भारती तब चरणों प्रणमामः। जय जय हे भगवती सुर भारती सा नि ध नि ध ध प म ध प म ग रे सा। जय जय हे भगवती सुर भारती तब चरणों प्रणमामः। जय जय हे भगवती सुर भारती तब चरणों प्रणमामः।
Thank you very much. Lieutenant General Bipin Puri has served this country and army gloriously for more than 40 years in various capacities, superannuating as Director General Armed Forces Medical Services. He is recipient of the prestigious PVSM and VSM medals for exemplary service and has served as the Honorary Surgeon to the President of India. Member of governing bodies of renowned institutions of the country, including National Medical Council and AIIMS, Sir joined as Vice Chancellor KGMU in August 2021 and has led through the tumultuous pandemic era from the front to a positive present and an optimistic future. His commitment to KGMU is unquestionable. We request Sir to bless us on this auspicious day with a welcome note.
Padma Bhushan Professor K.S. Reddy, former President of the Public Health Foundation of India, Professor Shaili Avasthi, Dean Research, Professor Tripathi, Dean Academics, heads of departments, eminent faculty of KGMU, residents, students, friends, ladies and gentlemen. It is my great pleasure, a great honor for me to be standing here this morning and extending a very warm welcome to Padma Bhushan Professor K.S. Reddy, who's our chief guest for this research foundation function being held today. On behalf of the college, on behalf of the university, it is a function also to reiterate some important facets on which this college and this medical university has grown over the years. I sincerely believe that over the years, this function has become a flagship occasion to bring together all those minds whose zest to introspect, minds who have an earnest desire to excel, minds which need, who want to look beyond the obvious and beyond the ordinary. And I think all this capsuled into one makes Research Foundation Day a very, very important part of our academic calendar. Friends, ladies and gentlemen, Marie Curie once said, "Nothing in life is to be feared. It is only to be understood. Now is the time to understand more so that we may fear less. So I say I bring in this quote from Marie Curie because to take you back to pandemic times, you would all agree with me when, had it not been the excellent scientific work which went alongside when we were confronting the pandemic head on, had it not been for the medical scientists, the researchers who went alongside, things could have been much worse. It was week, you would recollect, it was week after week, and the going was getting tough. People didn't understand the disease, the pathophysiology. What is this hyperinflammatory syndromes, and what are the cytokine storms, and how do we confront all this? And what is going to be the pathophysiology, the thromboembolic episodes, the effect on the various systems of the body? And that knowledge was not known. And we kept discovering, we kept looking, we kept introspecting, we kept analyzing details, information. And I think that began a story. A story was being unraveled. And as we tried to put the different parts of this crossword puzzle into place, and so many things happened. SOPs, strategies evolved, how to handle the viral antivirals, the RT-PCRs, the SOPs in the intensive care, how do you, and then of course the vaccines was in itself, I think, a story in itself, be it our own Serum Institute or be it Bharat Biotech. Now those were unique, huge research initiatives taken in our own country. And at KGMU, we were as active in this part of the medical research as well, because as many of you, not only did you evolve your own SOPs, your strategies in the ICU setting, in the laboratory setting, whether it's for COVID or was it mucormycosis and its various fallouts. So I think it's been science all the way, and we at KGMU take great pride in our laboratory setting, our clinicians, our intensive care, and more importantly, igniting young minds. Igniting minds to try and analyze, to question the status quo ante, and try and look beyond the ordinary. So I sincerely believe that research must continue to be the centerpiece of our intellectual lives, and our commitment to research must grow because our problems, friends, ladies and gentlemen, continue to grow, be it climate change, be it environmental pollution, be it food contamination with poisons, pesticides, zoonotic diseases, problems of water, polluted water, or scarcity, whichever way you see it. So I think there is a need for us constantly to look at, analyze issues, problems which we face on a day-to-day basis. And I think to that extent, we are very proud of the analytical team here at the KGMU. And I'm aware that this university has grown by leaps and bounds in research, is now clearly the front runner amongst all the universities in the region. But what probably clicks for KGMU are a couple of things. And I think it's got an excellent research atmosphere, huge patient load, a huge variety, spectrum of different disease settings, problems, a culture for innovation, and And of course, that interdisciplinary ethos, which I think is really the crux of the whole thing. In our quest to perform quality research for global recognition, so what has happened in the last year or so, since the last Research Foundation, a couple of things have happened, and I thought it's time for me to tabulate them and also take great pride from what has happened. So in this year, 10 of our past and present faculty members figure in the top 2% scientists in the world in their area of expertise as per the Stanford University and the Elsevier international rankings. And the number, and I say this with great pride, continues to grow every year. We have upgraded our research cell, which was hitherto it was a research cell, is now a deanery of our research and development of KGMU. The ICMR research methodology course has been made compulsory for all promoting faculties and passing PG and super specialty courses. So that has become absolutely mandatory. KGMU, as you are all aware, has been chosen as one of the 9 centers in the whole of India to start a Cochrane affiliate center. So it's one of the 9 centers. The Center for Advanced Research, Advanced Mycology Diagnostics and Research, Genetic Diagnosis, the Genetic Diagnostic Unit, which is the National Inherited Disease Administration, the Nidan Kendra. They're all recent additions to our abilities. The DHR, MRU all promise to support the highest level. So that's another thing that we've got from the ICMR, the MRU. And of course, the newly formed Trainee Research Association of KGMU, what we call as TRAC, where the UGs are trying to get into medical research. A Center of Precision and Personalized Medicine is yet another addition that we have started under the leadership of Professor Dhavendra Kumar, who has been an alumnus of this college. And of course, now very ably being led by Professor Tripathi, Professor Amita Jain. As all of you know, recently the Honorable Chief Minister was here to inaugurate Asia's first pathogen reduction machine at the Transfusion Medicine Department. Now, I say this because it adds to our capacity building. It helps us to look after patients who are critically ill, transplanted patients. You want to prevent graft versus host reactions. So it is in that perspective. Then you look at on a larger canvas, and then you check out your results, you do your studies, you do your RCTs and see how these things are going to work for you. I'm so very happy, so very proud that our organ transplant and a brain dead program has taken off. So happy to share with the Honorable Chief Guest that just last week we did the first dual transplant of liver and kidney, the first in North India, in a government hospital. So I thought it is the corporate hospitals which are talking about results, but here is a government hospital. It's not AIIMS New Delhi, sir. It is not PGI Chandigarh, it's KGMU. So I'm very, very proud, very, very happy. In the past 5 years, to our credit, we have approximately 3,000 indexed publications, about 22,000 odd citations, and an H-index of 45. So, which itself speaks for itself. 1,200 odd extramural fundings, with a research to the tune of nearly 117 crores last 5 years. So that's the numbers that we are talking about, a reflection of our leanings into medical research. There are some crucial forays for us into meditech and biotech, and which include, of course, things like our summer immersion programs for engineering students to collaborate and try and innovate solutions in the context of healthcare. We've been organizing, as you're all aware, hackathons, and also now the new program, the SIB Shine program, where the acronym is Synergizing Healthcare Innovations and Entrepreneurship. Now, which actually is likely to just catapult you, KGMU, to the helm of innovations and technology. So I sincerely believe that this handshake of the engineering and medicine is going to be a very major important collaboration. And of course, as I mentioned, the Deanery of Innovations, which has been established, and our own KGMU IPR policy of KGMU has been established. So friends, I sincerely believe that expanding frontiers of knowledge and triggering interest amongst students must be the priority of all institutions, as we have tried to do for ourselves here at KGMU. Also, focus should be on translational research with societal applications through collaborative research, and to make ourselves as leaders in the country. So I have a couple of suggestions to make, and which include things like forging more international and national collaborations, aiming once again at whatever research should be translational in nature, bringing cutting-edge technology to the common man by making it affordable and accessible, using AI. Remember, AI is really going to take over. In the next decade, you'll see is AI everywhere. And therefore, we have to understand, get onto the bandwagon. In your own disciplines, you must get into the bandwagon of AI. Use telemedicine to reach out to patients at their doorsteps. And I think that would once again catapult you to frontiers, to greater frontiers. Also, preparing trained professionals with programs in research methodology, ethics, and IPR is yet again a responsibility of course, the Dean Research. But I request all heads also to understand that it is upon you to ensure that each and every faculty member inculcates these facets in their faculty development. Ladies and gentlemen, I have great pleasure on behalf of the university to welcome Padma Bhushan Professor K. Srinath Reddy, who is an honorary distinguished professor and a goodwill ambassador for the Public Health Partnership or Public Health Foundation of India. He has been the past president of PHFI and was formerly the head of Department of Cardiology at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi. To me, it's a great pleasure to have you, sir, to have you here this morning. And he, friends, is an apt recipient of the Professor Devendra Gupta Oration Award to be delivered today. In conclusion, then, let me say this, that it is we at KGMU pledge to forge ahead in medical research, to convert knowledge into wisdom, and be a beacon of light and knowledge in this part of the world. My assured support to each and every one of you as you move on and to realize your true potential. So friends, in conclusion, let me once again bring in a quote from Albert Einstein when he said, "It is the supreme art of the teacher to awaken joy in creative expression and knowledge. And we as teachers would want to do that. I look forward to today's deliberations. Thank you and Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your vision. May I now request the dais personages to please take the front seats so that they may view the presentations which are ensuing. Could I now request the prolific, prodigious, hardworking, trailblazer Dean Research and Development, Professor Shaili Avasthi, to apprise us of the annual report.
Esteemed Chief Guest, Professor Srinath Reddy, Honorable Vice Chancellor of King George Medical University, Lieutenant General Puri, Dean Academic, Dean Dental, Dean Nursing, heads of various departments, faculty, postgraduates, PhDs, and dear undergraduate students. It's my privilege to present the research report of King George Medical University for the year 2021-2022 as we march towards NAC accreditation this year after 5 years. The research showcase was initiated in 2004, is held annually, and as our Honorable Vice Chancellor said, our endeavor is to mainstream research culture in the university. What you are seeing today is a result of all the endeavors of so many Vice Chancellors, heads of departments over years. The showcase started with plenary lecture, and each year we were fortunate enough to call upon one or more person eminent in research to give this lecture, to motivate students. In the year 2021, our former Vice Chancellor, Dr. Deven Gupta, started an oration by a corpus in the university, and the first Deven Gupta oration was delivered by Balram Bhargav. Today, it is the second oration, and we are very proud and privileged to have with us Srinath Reddy ji. So what are the new R&D initiatives? Our Vice Chancellor has alluded to some of them. Some others I will quickly show you so that you know the progress is in the right way, and the students who are watching will remember this, and years later when they come, see how far the university has gone. As Sir said, we have a synergizing healthcare innovation and entrepreneurship grant from the DBT, a bio-initiative incubator in partnership with IIT Kanpur, and this year 50 postgraduate fellows will be there for next 5 years. 10 have been inducted this year to develop innovations which can go right to marketing. As you know, Cochrane has established 8 centers in the country. We happen to be one of the centers, and we hope to give evidence which may guide and change policy of the country. We have now Advanced Mycology Diagnostic and Research Center in Department of Microbiology. With competitive funding, we have established Genetic Diagnostic Unit for National Inherited Disease Administration, NIDAN, in KGMU, in the Department of Pathology. And we have an upcoming Center of Precision Medicine in collaboration with Alumni Georgians overseas. Besides all these things, this is just a bird's eye view. Much is happening under the iceberg, which you don't see. The regular R&D activities, the ongoing research projects. There are 239 this year in 37 departments with extramural funding, most extramural competitive, out of which 171 are in government sponsorship, 21 by international agencies, 47 by industry. And Professor Reddy will definitely relate to his Public Health Foundation of India, which perhaps has much larger corpus. But remember, we are an academic teaching institution with clinical care, and research is one of the pillars and not the only way we stand. So these are the total number of projects. Government is sponsoring a largest chunk of the pie for our institution. So we have approximately 34 crores, out of which 20 has come from government, 3 from international agencies, 2 from pharmaceutical companies. The pharmaceutical company input is also important because it teaches rigors of clinical trials. And not only that, it gives us consultancy which is required for the institution, which the government agencies and international do not give us. So the total research grant, you can see from 2017 onwards, grants in crores, 20, 26, 27, 21, and now it is 24 crore rupees. And extramural grant, this is a comparison: yellow government, blue international, green drug trials. Always government was much more. And we still had a component of pharmaceutical support for our various activities. Besides that, we do not have dedicated intramural grants, but from our institutional overheads and institutional income, we give grants nurturing young researchers through intramural funding. And in the year 2001-2 and 21-22, 31 lakhs were sanctioned to 11 faculty, 9 residents, 6 undergraduates. The call for 2022 will open in December of this year. It has to be announced. So the IMR grant, you can see it is not one time. In the last 5 years and even beyond, the IMRs were always there, the intramural research grants were there. Now the ethics committee has to be there because without ethics, research is not possible. We follow the ICMR GCP standards. We are registered with the DCGI, re-registered again as is the requirement. And we are also on the NETIC portal. All the numbers are given here. Last year, the committee met 11 times. We took 523 new research proposals, which included not only the projects, but the PG, PhD thesis, the UG thesis, if it was there, and of course, nursing, BSc nursing dissertation works were taken up. Scientific contributions, as our Vice Chancellor told you, in 2019, 3 of our faculty figured in top 2% of scientists from India. The global list is separate. In the Indian, 3 of us were there. In 2020, 3 faculty from KGMU got Career Award from India. And in 2022, in addition to 3, 5 more came in top 2% scientists of India. Today, the number is 9. The number will keep increasing as our research outputs keep increasing. One of it is actually 10, but Professor U.C. Chaturvedi, who also received the Career Award of 2020, is no longer with us. Therefore, listed are 9 people who have come in the list for 2021. So we had in the last 5 years 2,715 publications. In the last 1 year, 601 index publication in PubMed and Scopus, 601 out of 400 odd faculty, making 1.5 publication per faculty per year on an average, 53 books and book chapters with 22,000 citations in Scopus, and a H-index, a decent H-index of 45. As said, we have a IPR policy which is on our website. We follow the national and international norms. But what is very delightful to tell you all is that our UGs which are sitting here, 50 of you applied to ICMR STS, which is excellent. I hope this year you apply because ICMR calls have opened or are about to open. The last date is going to be soon. Out of 50, 19 of you got it. This is a big thing for KGMU, and a big round of applause. This year, we hope more and more of you percolate the message to those who have not come. 14 students were awarded PhD last year, and till date, 16 candidates have joined PhD program for the session 2022-23. Our PhD ordinances are being modified to be in line with the national education policy. The final modification is due to be done in next few days, then it will be put up for the various administrative approvals of the university. The number of PhD scholars each year is shown here, 16 being last year. PhD degrees have been awarded, 14 degrees as I told you last year. And we have refocused on the foundation course of PhD with one faculty being PhD coordinator. She is doing the foundation course. PG seminars are very well taken with big attendance, and it's online for research capacity building. Besides our PG students doing the mandatory ICMR course, regular meetings and mentoring of research scholars is done, and we are trying our best to have academic vibrancy, research vibrancy with various endeavors and various directions which the Vice Chancellor is taking us. So, international webinar was conducted on mixed method research, foundation course lectures, PG lectures, and this is just a showcase of the lectures, PG seminars which have been organized, which our faculty participate. Now, a brief recap last year. On 20th November in the Scientific Convention Center, Dr. Balram Bhargav was there, and these are the pictures of last year. Next year, somebody will show the picture of this year for how research showcase was conducted in 2022. So with these few words, the future is we have to invest in our future generation, because our future generation is the one who will carry our name forward. We have done what we could. We will continue to do what we can, but investment in future is most important. We have to nurture newer and ongoing R&D activities, and identify niche areas for research, and definitely not only improve our individual H-index, but our individual H-index will contribute to improving KGMU H-index. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you, ma'am. It is time now to felicitate various awardees who have stood out by their excellence. The KGMU Professor Dhavendra Kumar Gold Medal for Young Investigators is the premier award to felicitate and encourage research done by young faculty. The winner of the Professor Dhavendra Kumar Gold Medal for the year 2021 is Dr. D. Himanshu, Additional Professor Medicine and in charge Infectious Disease Unit. May I request you to make your presentation, please?
Thank you, Professor Somend. Honorable Chief Guest, Professor Srinath D. Sir, Honorable Vice Chancellor Sir, Dean Academics, Dean Research, Dean Dental, Dean Nursing, and all the head of the departments and my fellow faculty and students. First of all, I thank you for actually honoring me with this prestigious Young Investigator Gold Medal. I was supposed to present a small, brief journey of mine with regards to my research. I'll just start off with the things that started long back in this institute, in this own hall, the Brown Hall, where we were introduced to the medical profession in the year 1997, and from there on, my journey started with following which I did the MD Internal Medicine out here in the same institute, and joined here in 2009 as a lecturer. Those were the days when the research was just being started, and my idea about research was actually more related to what my heads at that time showed us. That included our thesis and the case reports that we saw. As time progressed, in 2011, I became assistant professor, and in 2011, I started developing a little bit of interest in research. I had 2 original articles, more of case reports, and 1 chapter. And without doubt, the research that I viewed at that time was more of researching what already was there. We were very enthusiastic, and every patient, every new thing appeared as if it's a research. And we went about doing in a very haphazard manner, trying to look at all the diseases, whatever came to your knowledge. And when you are sitting in a gold mine like KGMU, where there are enough patient material and enough patients all over the place, you lose focus and you keep on doing research everywhere. Over the period of time, and I thank my institution for actually making me focused, and I started focusing myself towards more of infectious disease. And from then on, to date, I have 127 articles, 73 international and 54 national, with an impact factor with an H index of 18. This is from the Google Scholar, along with the citations of total of 1,708 and an I-10 index of 34. This is just a beginning, as ma'am said, that as we go further, we'll need to actually improve further the H index so that the institutional H index also goes up. My articles have been published in various journals, which include BMJ, QGM, International Journal of Infectious Diseases, IGMR, Journal of Infectious Diseases, Scientific Reports, Mycosis, Cytokines, and further all other international journals. Studies, as you see, one of the most important studies that I have actually contributed was part of it was the PLACID trial, which we know, the PLACID trial, which was published in BMJ and was one of the path-breaking trial, not only for me as a person, but for the country itself, where this trial actually showed that the plasma therapy was not useful for COVID, and this was one of the major RCTs which was done by the country in 2020. From then on, my interests have been more towards infectious disease, and that's where I also work, and basically the inflammatory processes which work and which actually change the milieu of the infectious disease patients is something which I've been working on, including the Japanese encephalitis, COVID vaccinations, as sir pointed out, the hemophagocytosis that includes the cytokine storms, which as a matter of was the first article which actually did antepartum bone marrow studies in COVID patients when nobody was ready to enter. Our pathologist entered and actually helped us in doing the bone marrows, and that was the first article which showed the histiocytic infiltration of the bone marrow. And then recently we also did T-cell dysfunction in mucormycosis. And finally, the utility of itraconazole, which was another study which I just want to highlight, which showed that how Times actually focused you to do research. We had so many mucor patients and very little drugs, and that's when with the microbiology department, with our mycology lab, which we showed the advanced mycology lab which was established here, we were able to find that many patients could actually benefit with itraconazole, which is a very cheap alternative to the posaconazoles and isavoconazoles which are prevalent currently in the treatment. So finally, my field of interest has been infectious diseases and neglected tropical diseases, and as you can see, it's the immune modulation in different infections which I have been trying to focus on. And as I go further, this is what my extramural projects have also been. Most of the projects, I have total 21 extramural government projects, and out of which 9 are directly where I am the principal investigator. Some of them have been completed and still going on, which includes the National COVID Registry, the mucor studies, which also includes different studies on the antibiotic stewardship programs and studies on HIV. Recently, we also, the Government of India established the Advanced Center for Clinical Trials, that was through ICMR, where the Center for Central Area was allotted to KGMU with me as the lead applicant and the heading this Advanced Clinical Trial Center, along with the MRUs which have been already established in this university. In the past, I have been awarded as a young researcher in the field of diabetes, but now time has passed. Actually, I have shifted from diabetes to infectious diseases, and my main focus has been infectious disease. And as I look into the future, as sir and ma'am pointed out, translational medicine is something which I think is important. Looking for low-cost treatment modalities for our country, for our people, is something which we have to look into. That's where the RCTs come into picture. Equally oriented towards patient-oriented treatment modalities have to be searched, and that includes precision medicine. These are the fields which I feel are the futures which I would like to look forward to as I go ahead. No researcher is ever complete without the team and the backing that one has, and it is a collaborative part of all the other people, the teachers, of course, all the deans who have helped us. But I have to acknowledge all these faculty and doctors who have collaborated, and it's with their collaboration only we have been able to produce research. Research is never done in individuality, and all my research was with the help of these professors, Professor Amita Jain ma'am, Professor Vimla Venkatesh ma'am, Dr. Prashant Gupta, Dr. Balen, Dr. Geeta Yadav, and my co-faculty, Dr. Amit Kumar and Dr. Ambuj, and all my students who have actually helped us in collecting the data and help me in doing research. Thank you.
Dr. Himanshu, could you please stay? Thank you very much and many congratulations. Could the dignitaries please present him with the prestigious award? Dr. Himanshu. So could you please come ahead? Thank you very much. So could you please stay? There are some certain awards which are coming up. Yeah, thank you very much. So the feat of 10 of our faculty having a worldwide ranking in the top 2% of the field is one to feel proud and inspired by. The Honorable Vice Chancellor therefore wishes today to felicitate them. May I now request the luminaries to please do the honors for Professor Rashmi Kumar from the Department of Pediatrics. Avasti, again from the Department of Pediatrics. Professor R.K. Garg from the Department of Neurology. Professor Amita Jain from the Department of Microbiology. Professor Suryakant is out of station. He had requested Dr. Jyoti Bajpai from his department to collect the award. Professor Rajesh Verma from the Department of Neurology. Professor Abbas Ali Mehdi from the Department of Biochemistry. Professor Divya Mehrotra wanted to really come, but she has been taken quite ill and is not here. So, Dr. Sujita Kumar Kar from the Department of Psychiatry. Thank you, dignitaries. Could you please take your seats in the front? We also remember late Professor U.C. Chaturvedi today, who was in the top 2% list. The best PhD thesis is awarded by the university after a tough and waterproof selection process. The winner of the Vice Chancellor's Medal for Best PhD Thesis for the year 2021-22 is Dr. Vangala Ramakrishna for his thesis entitled Genetic Mutations Associated with Injectable Anti-Tubercular Second-Line Drugs in Clinical Isolates of Mycobacterium tuberculosis from North India. His guide was Professor Amita Jain, Head Department of Microbiology. Could ma'am please come and make a small presentation on behalf of the candidate who could not come despite best efforts?
Thank you very much for the opportunity to present on behalf of Dr. Vangala Ramakrishna, his PhD dissertation brief. We all tried very hard for him to come and present his work, but due to his some commitments at his current position, he could not come. This is Ramakrishna. He had a very tough journey. He came from Hyderabad, in fact from a village in Andhra, I believe 8 or 9 years ago, on a January afternoon as a technician of some company for repairing our equipment. And he never went back. He just stayed. He had no idea how cold January is in Lucknow. He had no idea how the food is in Lucknow. He could not speak Hindi. He knew very little English, and from here his journey started. He worked very hard to learn to speak Hindi. Now he can even write Hindi, he can talk English, and he has completed his dissertation. So that was his achievement. I'm so happy for him. He started his work to determine the prevalence of mutations in RRS gene. This is one gene which has mutations in drug-resistant TB strains, leading to the resistance to second-line injectable antitubercular drugs. To evaluate the adjunctive use of 3 more genes, this is TLYA, EIS, and GITB genes mutations, in achieving increased sensitivity for detection of second-line injectable drug resistance, and to estimate the pattern and prevalence of second-line injectable drug resistance among MDR-TB isolates. He worked very hard to collect the strains for MDR-TB and XDR-TB, looked for phenotypic resistance to second-line drugs and fluoroquinolones, looked for mutations in RRS, TLY, GITB, and EASI genes using the gold standard sequencing mutation detection method, and analyzed data to study the prevalence and association of these mutations with different resistant forms of TB. I'm just showing the results in summary. He showed that the resistance to SLIDs among newly diagnosed MDR-TB was around 10%, and this was under the programmatic setting, which is the National Tuberculosis Elimination Program, that time called RNTCP. Cross-resistance among SLIDs was high, especially amongst kanamycin and amikacin, which was in the tunes of 75%. He showed that the cumulative sensitivity of detection of drug resistance in all the 4 genes was in tune of around 80%. RRS, EIS, and TLY8 gene mutation sensitivity was low. Highest was with RRS, but together they could pick up around 78%. They could predict around 78% phenotypic resistance. Specificity of all these mutations was high. 22% of XDR-TB isolates had no mutations in candidate genes, so sensitivity was less by 22%. Mutations in RRS gene may cause resistance to all SLIDs, including capreomycin, which is another injectable drug. Mutations in TLY8 gene, including GG insertion at 592 position. So this might be a little more technical for students sitting here, but this gene mutations increase the possibility of detecting resistance to capreomycin alone, which can be missed by other genes. Mutations in GIDB gene, which was one of the candidate gene he studied, he saw that these mutations are frequent, but they are found both in sensitive and resistant strains, therefore cannot be used for predicting the drug resistance. He also detected one noble SNP, which was never previously reported, at position 1138 in RRS gene. So what is the value of all this he found? He said that detecting mutations in all the genes under study can predict resistance in about 80% cases. Only 20% we will miss. Their geographical variation, as he found a new mutations, so they should be studied regularly. Constant surveillance is important. There's a need to look for other mechanisms of drug resistance. There's need to develop indigenous diagnostics based on local data, because otherwise we will miss the cases. Use of SLIDs is now not that welcomed. We are trying to take them out of the program, but due to several disadvantages, SLIDs are still in use for managing MDR-TB because we have limited choice of drugs for managing drug-resistant TB. His work was published in several publications. 4 are the important which I have listed here. With this, thank you for your patience. Thank you very much. I thank everyone for the opportunity.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, could you please stay to receive the award from the dignitaries, and could the dignitaries please give the award to ma'am on behalf of her candidate? Thank you. So the Research and Development faculty organized a poster presentation competition for publications in prestigious journals in the year 2021-22 by KGMU faculty, PGs, PhD scholars and students in various categories. Selection of winners was done by a panel of external experts. The competition was extremely close, with more than 50 entries having been published in journals with high impact and being very relevant. Before announcing the winners, it is our duty to express respect and gratitude to all the experts and judges who gave their invaluable time and experience in deciding the winners. Dr. Nuzhat Hussain, Brigadier Vandana Negi, Dr. Rajni Bala, Professor Dhavendra Kumar, Professor A.K. Tripathi, Professor Gaurav Agarwal, Professor R. Ravi Shankar, Dr. Abhishek Chauhan, Dr. Deepti Agarwal, Dr. Shalin Kumar, Dr. U.C. Ghoshal, Dr. A.P. Jain, Dr. Akash Agarwal, Dr. Vinita Agarwal, Dr. Ujjwala Ghoshal, Dr. Rajan Bhatnagar, Dr. Vandana Tiwari, Professor Swati Gupta, Professor Ajay Singh, Professor Neerja Singh, and Brigadier Sanat Khanna. Thank you very much for your contribution, sirs and ma'ams. May I now request the dignitaries to once again please come forward so that we can start announcing the winners of different categories of this much awaited competition. So the best preclinical paper goes to Dr. Wahid Ali from the Department of Pathology as first author for his article entitled Circulating Soluble Lectin-like Oxidized Low-Density Lipoprotein Receptor 1, a diagnostic indicator across the specimen of acute coronary syndrome. The punch point was circulating levels of SLOX1 might be a diagnostic and prognostic marker for atherosclerotic events. The best paraclinical paper goes to Dr. Prashant Gupta from the Department of Microbiology for his article entitled Utility of Itraconazole and Terbinafine in Mucormycosis, a Proof of Concept Analysis, with the punch point, ITZ and TRB appear to be potential agents for treatment of infections caused by R. oryzae and R. microsporus. The best clinical medical paper goes to Dr. Sujita K. Kar from the Department of Psychiatry for his article entitled Safety and Efficacy of Early Augmentation with Repetitive Transcranial Magnetic Stimulation in the Treatment of Drug-Free Patients with Obsessive Compulsive Disorders. The best clinical surgical paper this time was a tie. The first of the people who were tied were Dr. Siddharth Agarwal from the Department of Ophthalmology on his article entitled Binocular Summation in Comitant Extropia Changes After Surgery. With the punch point, there is significant improvement in binocular summation in extropia after surgery. The doctor who got the second first prize was Dr. Harshvardhan Singh from the Department of Plastic Surgery for his article entitled Dynamic Correction of Claw Hand Deformity with a Simple Insertion into Lumbrical Muscle. He's out of station today, but it's our duty to announce his medal. Going on to the best dental faculty paper, the author is Dr. Shalini Gupta from the Department of Oral Pathology for her article entitled Comparison of Demergian and Camerier Methods and Development of Modified Camerier and Demergian Formula, more efficient for North Indian population. Congratulations, Dr. Shalini. Now coming on to some special category awards. The first one is for best paper for PG students, PhD scholars and MSc nursing students category. And the winner is Dr. Deep Chakravarti from Radiotherapy Department for his article entitled Palliative Radiotherapy, a 1-week course in advanced head and neck cancer, quality of life outcomes. The punch point being 1-week short course palliative radiotherapy should be a standard, particularly in low middle income countries. The best paper in the undergraduate MBBS BDS nursing category goes to Shubhajit Roy from MBBS 2019 batch for his article entitled Effects of Diet Components on the Sleep Quality of First-Year Medical Students of a Medical University of Northern India. And he found that average calorie intake of vegetarians was higher, but their sleep quality was worse compared to non-vegetarians. And the last paper in today's categories are the paper for KGMU intramural project grants, which goes to Vishal Lodhi from the MBBS 2017 batch for his article entitled Treatment Delayed is Treatment Denied, a review of late burn contractures to a tertiary hospital. Many congratulations to all the winners. I now request the dignitaries to take their seats back on the dais. For the first time, an annual quiz competition was organized by the Deanery of Research and Development in collaboration with Trainee Research Association of KGMU for MBBS and BDS students on basic medical research. It was a closely fought competition between 6 teams. Could our guests on the dais please felicitate the winners Shubham Tripathi and Mehul Saxena from MBBS 2018 and MBBS 2021 batch. Thank you, sir and ma'am. May I now request Professor of Cardiology, Director of the prestigious SIB SHINE program, and the Dean of Innovations, Professor Rishi Sethi, to introduce the 2022 recipient of the Professor Devendra Gupta Research Oration Award.
We in the field of cardiology has always known Professor K. Srinath Reddy as a teacher and a former head of department, All India Institute of Medical Sciences in New Delhi. The world outside cardiology recognizes him as a leading light in public health and founder president of Public Health Foundation of India. But both these descriptions only express a tip of an immensely vast academic career and persona. Padma Bhushan in the year 2005, first Indian to be elected for the National Academy of Medicine USA, Queen Elizabeth Gold Medal by Royal Society of Health Promotion in 2005, WHO Director General's Medal for Leadership in Tobacco Control in 2003, Luther Terry Medal by American Cancer Society in 2009, Doctorate of Science honoris causa from University of Aberdeen, Scotland in 2011, from NTR Medical University in Andhra Pradesh in 2011, University of Lausanne, Switzerland 2012, University of Glasgow 2013, Jodhpur National University 2013, University of London 2014. He is an adjunct professor of public health in University of Emory, University of Sydney, University of Pennsylvania, and he's at present also the adjunct professor of public health in the Harvard School of Medicine as we speak today. The list is exhaustive, but I've only selected a few to reflect on the national and international repute Professor Reddy has earned for himself and his country over the years. Professor Reddy completed his undergraduate medical education from Hyderabad and moved to AIIMS, New Delhi to pursue an MD in medicine, followed by DM in cardiology, and he continued to work in the same department as faculty and finally headed the Department of Cardiology at AIIMS. He also obtained MSc in Epidemiology from McMaster University, Hamilton, Canada, and with a dual training in cardiology and epidemiology, he has led many landmark international studies in cardiology, the most famous of which is the Inter-Heart study that deals with examining the risk factors for myocardial infarctions. With hundreds of research publications to his credit, he has served on the editorial boards of various national and international journals. He has edited the National Medical Journal of India for more than 10 years. Professor Reddy is also an advisor to numerous health panels, expert health panels, to various national and international and state governments of the country. He has been advisor to various national committees and advisory body with respect to public health, president of World Heart Federation between 2013 and 14, core advisor to the Group of Health and Human Rights, Government of India, chair of expert group of Government of India for universal health coverage, past president of National Medical Board. The list can go on and on. He has summed up his experience in the matter related to public health in our country in his book, Make Health in India, Reaching Out to a Billion Plus. He seamlessly shifts between multiple roles of a cardiologist, an epidemiologist, a teacher, a researcher, a health administrator, and an ardent pioneering light in health advocacy, nationally and internationally. I would fail in my responsibility of introducing our honorable chief guest if I do not mention that behind the facade of this towering academician, researcher, and leader of health sciences is a kind, gentle, soft-spoken, and approachable human being. Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, honorable deans, eminent senior faculty members, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you our chief guest, Professor K. Srinath Reddy.
There's no presentation.
esteemed Vice Chancellor, distinguished faculty, the very fortunate students and young researchers who happen to be present in this highly reputed institution as their alma mater. Ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed a privilege to be part of this event and to deliver the Professor Devendra Gupta oration. This is an opportunity for me not only to visit this institution whose reputation is far higher than the high domes of this building and reaches ever skyward, but also to pay my own tribute to the hallowed memory of Professor Devendra Gupta through this oration. Let me offer an initial explanation or an anticipatory bail, if you will, of why I have chosen a very broad topic. It would have perhaps been easier for me to talk about cardiovascular disease or non-communicable disease or universal health coverage, which are areas I have dealt with fairly substantially. But recognizing the huge breadth of disciplinary expertise and research interests that exists in this highly varied and composite audience, I thought I would rather choose a broad topic, which might appear to be a little too general, but nevertheless is of relevance to everybody rather than to a particular segment. But firstly, let me pay tribute to KGMC for investing in high-quality research, the fruits of which were amply evident, not only in the annual report presented by Professor Shelly Avasthi, but also in the awards that were presented to so many distinguished contributors to high-quality research that emanated from this institution. Indeed, it is the duty of medical colleges in order to foster and nurture research. Let me quote Charles Mayo, one of the two brothers who founded the Mayo Clinic. Quote, "There are two objects of medical education: to heal the sick and to advance science." I would, of course, add public health, because he missed out on that one. But actually, he did not. He later on said, in a different context, the prevention of disease is one of the most important factors in the line of human endeavor. So, we recognize that public health and clinical medicine are part of a broad continuum. They do not live in separate universes. They actually represent health of human beings, both at the individual level and at the collective level, and they all depend upon efficient, equitable, and empathetic systems of delivery. Indeed, when people ask me what is the difference between clinical medicine and public health, having featured in both the worlds, I try to simplify the explanation saying that clinical medicine delivers health in retail, whereas public health delivers health in wholesale. It is at the population level through policies, systems, programs, and community engagement. But as I said, and as actually Charles Mayo said, one of the duties of medical education is to advance science. So both clinical medicine and public health are fueled by robust science. Science is sterile if it lacks social relevance. Policy and practice will crumble on clay feet if they do not stand on the foundations of strong science. So there is an integral relationship that institutions must recognize and foster as they move along the pathway of science. So how do we advance science? Through research, which is a systematic and objective study of natural and anthropogenic phenomena. But what is the purpose of research when we try and place it in the social context, or even in the relatively limited area of health systems? It is to generate evidence-informed, context-relevant, resource-optimizing, culturally compatible, and equity-promoting recommendations for policy and practice. Now, evidence is absolutely important. Context can be altered and does alter. Resources can be raised to make the impossible possible. Culture is dynamic and can be molded. But evidence and equity are the sine qua non of research. But then, if you say that these are the objects of research, are you ignoring open-ended research, which is driven by intellectual curiosity rather than by a specific purpose? I believe it is absolutely necessary also to have that kind of inquisitive mind which can actually explore the horizons of knowledge by open-ended research. But an open-ended research is not an end in itself. It only is the beginning of something which drives the delivery of a social purpose. To give an example, it is like a new model car. You may test drive it in the showroom or on few of the roads in a very open-ended manner. But ultimately, when you buy it and put it on the road, there is a destination you have to reach, and you drive to that destination. And therefore, you have to convert your inquisitive search in an open-ended research into ultimately a socially purposeful research which is directed at a delivery goal. Of course, it's also important how you frame the research questions. In fact, every research workshop begins with the topic, how to frame a research question. And that is very important from the point of view of science to have that level of focus. And it is also important not to only look at the biological element of that research question, but also what the ultimate health system or social application will be. One of the presidents of the American Statistical Association in his presidential address said, apart from the type 1 error, which is false positives, and the type 2 error, which are false negatives, he said there is a type 3 error, using the right methodology of research to answer the wrong question. So it is absolutely important for us also to pose the right question and then answer it using the right methodology. And there, we have to look at how we search for truth. Truth is seldom absolutely 100% absolute, but based on the information available, we come to the nearest approximation of truth. And there, we have to always try and look at what are the contending factors like chance, which has been called the eternal alternate hypothesis, bias and confounding, which is another type of bias. And of course, now we have yet another element, research fraud. We are looking at fraudulent papers being published, and we have to try and detect the element of fraud as well. But the scientific method is fairly clear. It was enunciated with great clarity by that philosopher of science, Karl Popper, who said the method of science is to study all the information that is available, then to hazard a bold conjecture, and then to gather evidence in a systematic manner to disprove that conjecture, to disprove that hypothesis, not to prove it. So essentially, he said the acid test of science is refutability. And only if you cannot refute it, then you reluctantly accept that it could be the truth. Only then, when you cannot reject the null hypothesis, then you say, okay, this might be the truth at this level of probability. never with 100% certainty. So refutability becomes one of the cardinal tenets of science, but also objectivity and verification and replicability. You do require more studies to replicate rather than a single isolated study. But in doing all this, particularly from the point of view of verification, Louis Pasteur had excellent advice to offer to his young researchers. He said, keep your enthusiasm, but let strict verification be its constant companion. So you have to all the time verify what you are gathering and be ready to reject it if it does not stand that particular test. So when you're really looking at the alternate hypothesis as well, of course, it has a lot of meaning, but then it can be what is called an alternate hypothesis 1, or you can have 2 alternate hypotheses depending upon whether you're using a one-tailed alpha or a two-tailed alpha. It is almost invariably taught in medical biostatistics that you must use a two-tailed alpha. Not always so. If you're dealing with a disease with terrible consequences, something like Ebola, for example, you know that there cannot be an alternate hypothesis that is worse than this. So you take one hypothesis that the treatment is likely to provide some benefit, and then use a one-tailed alpha that reduces your sample size. So you have to be also discriminant in your choice of statistical methods while respecting the method of science. Of course, we also know about beta error and alpha error. Now, coming to beta error of not having the right sample size, let me take an example from cardiology. All of us are so used to coronary care units, and we believe they're absolutely important for saving lives. When coronary care units were introduced, J.R.A. Mitchell or Tony Mitchell, who was considered to be one of the best research analysts of that time, he was supposed to be one of the best research methodologists of that time, conducted a study in which he said the coronary care units do not offer any advantage over management in a general medical unit. The problem was it was an underpowered study. They were also looking for a 50% benefit mortality reduction. They could not detect even a 25% mortality reduction with that, as significant with that sample size. And anybody will accept that 25% mortality reduction is a remarkable reduction. So therefore, again, while pursuing research, we must not only ask the right question, but use the right methodology. And of course, we have the problem of alpha error, where you can actually, in fact, detect what may not be necessarily a true effect, because you have sort of sometimes, or detect an effect which may actually not have much of clinical significance, particularly if you have a huge sample size. And one of the problems, of course, is multiple significance testing. It has been well said that the moment you see a number of p-values in a table, that is the health hazard, because you may use your Bonferroni correction or some other correction, but still multiple significance testing can be a problem. Of course, you may have to have secondary hypothesis and try and test the secondary hypothesis, but quite often, other than your primary hypothesis on which you stand, and your test ultimately is on your primary hypothesis, others are generally hypothesis generating results, not hypothesis testing results. So again, the temptation of having multiple significance testing must either be given up or must be treated with a certain amount of caution. But then we also recognize that the p-value alone is not sufficient. We recognize, therefore, that we need not just one single estimate of the potential effect, but where in the band of certainty does that lie? So we go to the 95% confidence intervals or 99% confidence intervals, or sometimes 90% confidence intervals, and define that band of uncertainty. And in fact, confidence intervals are now being called the uncertainty interval. And we come to statistical versus clinical significance. What is statistically significant may not be clinically significant. And therefore, we really have to assess what that is. Sometimes publications will come up with very attractive relative risks. But actually, if the baseline risk is very small, the absolute risk reduction is very small. It doesn't have clinical significance. So it behooves the researcher not only to state the relative risk, but also what the absolute risk is. And that is why in clinical medicine, the number needed to treat, NNT, has become a very important element as well. Now, sometimes there is also the fallacy of intermediate endpoints or selected endpoints, and also looking at what we think are very attractive mechanistic pathways and saying that clinical intervention should be guided by plausible mechanistic pathways. But the real test is when you subject them to testing in clinical trials or other rigorous methodology, particularly with hard endpoints. Let me give you a few examples. When it comes to hormone replacement therapy in postmenopausal women, the heart estrogen progesterone replacement study called the HERS basically postulated that since premenopausal women have lesser coronary heart disease and other chronic diseases compared to males, female sex hormones must be protective, and therefore, for secondary prevention of coronary heart disease in people who have already experienced one event in the postmenopausal state, replacement of hormones would possibly redress that risk. A very attractive hypothesis indeed. But when the results of HERS came out, it was found out that not only there was no clinical benefit, but actually in the initial phase of the trial, there was a 52% increase in the coronary events in the hormone replacement group. Okay, you say that is secondary prevention. What about primary prevention? In healthy women who have not had a coronary event, there came the Women's Heart Initiative trial, again a huge trial, which tested out, again in postmenopausal healthy women with hormone replacement. And they found again no clinical benefit, but actually a 29% increase in coronary events and a 43% increase in stroke events, again early after the replacement. So many attractive hypotheses which set sail on the waves of mechanistic plausibility crash on the boulders of hard facts when they're tested in well-designed clinical trials. And that's not the only one. Coming back to cardiology, antiarrhythmic drugs, which were shown on Holter monitoring to substantially reduce ventricular ectopy, when tried out in the CAST study, the class 1 antiarrhythmic drugs were found to actually be proarrhythmic and increase the fatal events. So, as somebody put it, that particular hypothesis was castrated. Now, the other problem, of course, is how do you use the same thing also happened with alpha blockers in the ALL-HAD trial. Again, the alpha blockers like prazosin and doxorubicin were being used for hypertension treatment. But that particular limb had to be discontinued because of excess mortality due to heart failure. So again, we do require rigorous proof, not just mechanistic pathways which appear to be attractive. That's one major lesson that we learned. The second thing, of course, is what do you do with endpoints? Do you focus only on one selective endpoint and then advertise that as your success, or take all meaningful endpoints? There was a study called the Cambridge Heart Antioxidant Study, appropriately named CHAOS. Now, this particular study came up with this with antioxidants beta-carotene and said they tried it out in acute MI prevention, reducing mortality, and they said acute MI mortality is not reduced, but non-fatal MIs are reduced. So the headlines were antioxidants, beta-carotene, prevents heart attacks. But actually, the fatality rate was higher in the intervention group. So if you die of a heart attack, you're not available to have a non-fatal MI. So it is the survival bias. Therefore, how you actually position, that's why the whole idea of combining fatal and non-fatal endpoints came in, and now you are dealing with, in every trial, major cardiovascular endpoints or MACE. You're also looking at total mortality. So you have to look at ultimately what the overall outcome is, not look at a selective endpoint which is suiting you. And that is why we are also now looking at large, simple, randomized trials rather than smaller trials. We are also looking at which will have the sufficient power to examine a hypothesis and look at it. And of course, one of the challenges is subgroup analysis. Quite often, when you start delving into subgroups and then doing multiple hypothesis testing in the same data set, you land up with all kinds of results, which appear to be very biologically plausible. But interestingly, in the ISIS-2 trial, Richard Peto, the famous British statistician, published his results and had one particular subset analysis blanked out. It showed that a particular treatment was not effective, that is the combination of aspirin and thrombolysis, was not effective in 2 subgroups. And everybody said, okay, maybe those subgroups did not respond. And then when he revealed it, there were 2 zodiac groups, Libra and Gemini. So he poked fun, saying that this is what subgroup analysis is. So do subgroup analysis by all means, but treat it as hypothesis testing, not as hypothesis generating. That's the important lesson. So apart from large randomized control trials, you also look at meta-analysis of combining data from multiple trials. But now we are seeing many advances in trial methodology. Particularly in COVID time, we have seen adaptive trials coming in, because you do not have time, the luxury of time to conduct a large number of trials in new treatments sequentially, because you are challenged with a rampaging pandemic. So large-scale adaptive trials, platform trials, in which you are using the same comparison group but are adding on new intervention elements. So all these are rapidly emerging, and one has to become very familiar with this methodology. So we do need precision of estimates with narrow confidence interval or uncertainty interval, but we definitely need to ensure that our trial methodology is also improving. But randomized control trials are not the only thing. In fact, there are other research methods, and clinicians frequently have to grapple with diagnostic tests. And I'm glad one of the award-winning papers was dealing with a diagnostic test, diagnostic assessment. Now, we have been familiar with sensitivity, specificity, and predictive values, and with likelihood ratios. But what we really must recognize is the context matters, the pretest probability matters. Once you have the pretest probability defined, then the likelihood ratio of the test result, positive or negative, will determine the post-test probability. Far too often, we have only interpreted the test result as positive or negative. We have not looked at the pre-test probability to predict the post-test probability. And this is where Bayesian analytics come in. And here lies a story. Thomas Bayes, actually a preacher interested in mathematics, in 1763 published the Bayes theorem. But later on, Louis Fisher, the distinguished statistician who brought in the Fisher statistics, rubbished Bayes' theorem and made sure that nobody in the 20th century or 19th century practiced it, 20th century particularly. But then, in the latter half of 20th century, and particularly in the 21st century, Bayes' theorem has become very, very important and is beginning to dominate statistical analysis and thinking in multiple areas because the prior probability matters and mere linear models are not really relevant and we need to deal with complexity science. Let me quote Nate Silver here. Nate Silver is a statistical wizard who has predicted with great accuracy almost every presidential election in the United States. He also had predicted the baseball scores and results, and then he started transferring it into the political arena. So he's considered an absolute statistical wizard. So in his book, The Signal and the Noise, he says, quote, "Information becomes knowledge only when it is placed in context. Without it, we have no way to differentiate the signal from the noise, and our search for the truth might become swamped by false positives." So therefore, context becomes important. And therefore, we have to really look at how far we must pursue our reductionist thinking. Quite often, we have been trained to have reductionist linear approaches, one-on-one interactions, one-to-one interactions. But in human health, there are one-to-many and many-to-one interactions. Very seldom you see one-to-one linear interaction. And these are the rule. Biological systems are not closed, they are open. And complex systems are usually open. So, the spectrum of science is reductionist in content, but holistic in context. Like the colors of the rainbow. Each color of the rainbow appears so vivid and bright and beautiful, but it's only when you merge them together you produce the brilliant white light in which you can see the truth. Now, it so happens that complexity science is becoming one of the most important elements right now, particularly in the context of COVID. Even the SARS-CoV-2 virus has been defined as a complex adaptive system by itself. Look at the number of mutations it produces with great ease. So, what are complex systems? What are the characteristics? It has a large number of dynamically interacting elements, non-linear interactions, a wide diversity of elements, emergence of new elements from those interactions, of new variables, unexpected variables, path dependence, self-organization, and resilience. Now, these are absolutely important for us to study. We have heard, very rightly so, a great emphasis on this institution developing expertise and growing it in the area of precision medicine and personalized medicine. But there, when you are looking at a person as an individual, we must remember that that individual represents the interactions, the complex interactions between the metagenome of his or her genes, the genes of the microbiome of the trillions of microorganisms that are in that body, which together form the metagenome, and the superphenotype, not only decided by the physique of the person, but by the social environmental conditions around that person. So even in personalized medicine, your algorithms will have to really factor in all of that. And that is the complexity of that we have to really look at. This is true of human nutrition. We have moved from single nutrients to food items to composite diets, and composite diets to food systems, because single nutrients have not shown that kind of a robust benefit as composite diets. Now, Honorable Vice Chancellor did speak of climate change. He spoke about other challenges. All of these are complex systems. COVID-19 was a complex system. Not only the virus, how we respond to it, whether we wear masks or not, whether we take vaccines or not, what kind of fake news spreads around. These are complex systems. We cannot have a simple linear interaction. And therefore, complexity science becomes very important. And for complexity science, multidisciplinarity becomes very important. Now, it is true that in the medical field, if I may say so, physiology, immunology, biochemistry, microbiology, all of them have understood, accepted, and appreciated complexity. In clinical research, we still pursue that linear interaction. And it's important that we actually integrate that level of complexity into our mind. You may say, why are you trying to complicate our lives? Should we not really be focusing on something? Of course you must focus to find solutions. But remember, the researcher's mind must be like the modern camera. It has a zoom function, and to focus very sharply on a particular issue, it has a panorama function which can take in the whole picture. Or if I may use an example from Mahabharata, Arjuna is supposed to be a very adept warrior who, when Dronacharya asks him to focus on the bird, he only sees the eye of the bird. Very reductionist, very focused. But in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, he doesn't understand what to do. Till Krishna shows him the big picture of the Vishwarupa and says, understand the context, then you'll understand your duty. So that is where you have to have both the sharp focus as well as the broad understanding of the context. Okay. So multidisciplinary research is important. Mixed methods research is important. Quantitative and qualitative, and we have heard Professor Shalini Avasthi mention about mixed methods research. Research into social determinants of health is important. So what are the products of research? Science discovers, technology develops, health system, including public health, delivers. So you have to have health system. The products of your research have to be taken up. So we started with the so what question. What difference does this research question make? Now we move to the then what question. Now that we have the results, what do we do with it? And that is where we must try and integrate it into policy and practice. So that also requires research, implementation research, health technology assessment, health impact assessment of policies in other sectors. Let me just take the example of digital health. There's a huge range of digital health innovations, predictive algorithms, devices, pattern recognition, diagnostics, electronic medical and electronic health records, robotics, telemedicine, sensors, both external and now internal sensors which you swallow, and home care. You are having digital twins. You are having metaverse with extended reality, augmented reality, virtual reality, mind-boggling progress. But ultimately, you will have to assess it also to find out what it is adding up to. In this, as we are moving to the Internet of Medical Things, or IOMT, we must also assess for each digital health innovation, what is the usability, what is the trustworthiness, what is the efficiency, what is the clinical benefit, what is the economic benefit, what is the fairness, is there a digital divide, interoperability, reliability, resilience, scalability, security, practitioner acceptance, policymaker acceptance, public acceptance. But while these appear to be formidable, each one of them is eminently researchable. That is also a part of our research agenda. That is where science can show the way to answer these questions. But when we talk about artificial intelligence, let us remember, because the context matters, algorithms with a diagnostic or management developed on data sets in other parts of the world where conditions differ are not automatically transportable to our context. Therefore, it is absolutely essential that we in India, who are capable of generating very large data sets, generate our own algorithms which are based on our context and are much more relevant, and that is where KGMC can lead the way. So that answers the then what question, but how do we actually integrate it into policy and practice? How is policy made? Of course, policy can be made in the most idiotic fashion. In fact, Bismarck, in the 19th century, the German chancellor said there are two things that should not be watched while they're being made: sausages and public policy. Both are very messy. But even enlightened policy needs scientific credibility, financial feasibility, operational steerability, and political viability. Scientific credibility from biomedical, epidemiological, and clinical research, financial feasibility of cost effectiveness and affordability through health economics research, operational steerability through implementation research, and political viability through science, social science research. And that is why bringing in all these disciplines becomes very important. Team science grants are being given by institutions all over the world. I have been sitting on NIHR committees of UK, and I also had my colleagues applying for NIH grants in the US. They always ask, do you have a social scientist on your team? Do you have a community representative in your team? So very important for you to bring in all of these perspectives, even as a researcher, while you're assembling your teams. So partnerships are required within the academia, between institutions, because single institution may not be able to do all of this. So partnerships are important. Between countries, community engagement is important, patient engagement is important, policymaker engagement, health system manager engagement, and private sector engagement, which Dr. Shaliyavasti pointed out. Quite often, research has to be demand responsive. Health system managers have pressing questions. They want answers. You must try and get their perspectives and try and answer them so that their performance can improve much better. Well, I started with a quotation from Charles Mayo. So let me end with a quotation from his brother, William James Mayo. Quote, "The glory of medicine is that it is constantly moving forward, that there is always more to learn. The ills of today do not cloud the horizon of tomorrow, but act as a spur to greater effort." Unquote. I believe this institution can put in that greater effort and can really not only create the rainbows in the sky, but give us the dazzling white light of truth on very many issues of complexity that we will be forced to reckon with in the coming future. Thank you very much for your gracious invitation and for your generous attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for the brilliant and inspiring words. Before we proceed with our program, as permitted by Honorable Vice Chancellor, may we felicitate Professor Divya Mehrotra, who's a very brave person and has come despite all odds. She is in the top 2% of international scientists in the world in the field of dentistry, as per the rankings. Please, ma'am, could you please come ahead? Request the dignitaries to please felicitate her down the dais. Sir, yes, could you please stay here, so it's time for your felicitation. We wish to show our gratitude to Professor Reddy for his brilliant oration. I now request Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, and other dais dignitaries to felicitate the chief guest. Thank you, sirs and ma'am. James Allen said, "No duty is more urgent than that of returning thanks." I request our acclaimed, eminent, and impactful Dean Academics, Professor A.K. Tripathi, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Honorable Vice Chancellor, Lieutenant General Dr. Vipin Puri sir, Chief guest of today's function, Professor K. Srinath, Past President, Public Health Foundation of India, Padma Bhushan, Dean, Faculty of Dental Sciences, Professor Tikku, Dean Research, Professor Shaili Avasthi, the deans sitting in front, head of departments, faculty members, students, and the persons from media. It's really a great honor for me for this pristine duty of giving vote of thanks. At the outset, I would like to thank to our Honorable Vice Chancellor, who has emphasized the need, the importance, the potential of research in our university by motivating and by igniting thoughts, because he believes that you must have a critical thinking, not just doing what has been done. Just ask questions, try to find answers, and also the gaps. So with his motivation, his guidance, I think our university is going to have a new height as far as research is concerned. Thank you, sir. Thanks for your blessings. I'd like to thank our chief guest, Professor K. Srinath. You have heard his ration. He has very beautifully, very lucidly combined the two philosophies, reductionist approach and holistic approach. And also one thing which I want to highlight again, that now it is a very complex process. You may find one pathway, one target drug. That's not sufficient, because he has mentioned the whole systems medicine, like role of microbiota, role of immunomics, endocrine, and also not only that, social milieu, community milieu, and all that. So one has to take a holistic approach while focusing on a particular subject of research. Thank you, sir, for coming here, spending time and igniting thoughts in our students. Thank you, sir. I would like to thank all the participants in the quiz, in the poster, and other competitions, without whom participation, there would not have been any, the program has not been successful. I would like to thank all the faculty members, deans, students, researchers for coming here, and finally from persons from media. And I would urge them to publish in a way that it can motivate the concept of research in students at large. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We shall now have the national anthem.
पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड़ उत्कल बंग विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंग तब शुभ नामे जागे तब शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तब जया गाथा जनगण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे.
Could I now request all the audience to remain seated for just a minute more, because we have requested the dignitaries on the dais to have a group photograph with all the awardees. The awardees, could you please come down stage and have a group photograph, please? Yep. Sorry. Please come quickly. This concludes today's function. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your patience and your support.